Welcome. A bit about me. Um, I've had over 6 years worth of experience in graphic design, and I've done a little bit of everything really. So as you can see, I've done logo design, leaflets, brochures, vinyl graphics, etc. Um, and really, graphics, it's such a vital tool. You'll use it in pretty much everything. Yeah, guys, physics. You want to do a graphic design course? And we're doing a bit of a science course. There is a reason for it, I promise. Um, Basically, as I'm sure all of you are aware, there is like a test that you guys will have to do to pass this course, and it's multiple choice. So please, 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 please don't worry. It's it's pretty easy, but you've got to pass it basically to get your certificate, blah blah blah. And my job today, this evening, is to let you guys know sort of how to get through it. So light, not to bore you too much with it, but basically light is referred to as visible light from the human eye. And light is broken up and defined by wavelengths. Wavelengths range from infrared, long wavelengths, as you can see on the chart, and ultraviolet, which is like the purple, and then all the other colours are sort of in between. So that's light, made up of wavelengths, easy. So then that brings us on to refraction, and this pretty awesome guy here, which I'm sure we all know, Sir Isaac Newton. We have him to thank for showing that light is actually made up of a variety of colour. So obviously, basically, you can combine all these colours together and it makes white light. Refraction, it happens when bending light through one medium to another. That's all you really need to think about with that. So that's physics. Now biology. Oh yeah. Again, this is purely just so that you guys can pass the test, that you understand a bit of the science behind. How are we seeing colour? I mean, in the design process, we're doing it all the time. We don't really realise what's going on. We don't really think about it. And to be honest, as long as, if you can take away from this rods and cones, I'm happy with that. That's cool for me. Obviously, light travels through the eye, goes through the cornea, it goes to the back of the eye, and this is where there is this layer of tissue made up of all these lovely rods and cones. And they look quite funny, these little bits, but basically this is a more simplified diagram of rods and cones. And cones are concentrated in the centre of the retina called the macula, and they provide the clear, sharp vision, and they are the reason why we detect colour, why we can see colour. Rods are for more black and white and more peripheral vision. So if you've ever found yourself in a situation, where you wake up in the middle of the night, you're like, oh, I need to go to the toilet, and I can't really turn on the lights, so you've got to kind of see your way through, and you sort of see peripheral vision. Well, that's the rods for you. All the colour that we're seeing is thanks to the cones. So just remember, rods are black and white, peripheral vision, cones are colour. So that's rods and cones. So now we get into more sort of fun stuff. So we have the colour wheel and all these lovely little leaves, different colours. There we go. Okay, so obviously I'm sure you've all heard of primary colours, secondary colours, tertiary colours. Primary colours, as it pretty much says there, it's a set of pigments. Every single colour, apart from red, yellow and blue, but basically orange, purple, green, whatever, if you break that colour down, you will find that it is made up of the three core colours, which is red, yellow and blue. Pretty easy. Secondary is obviously the equal mixing of two primary colours, which creates green, purple, orange. And then finally tertiary, and tertiary gets kind of forgotten about, I think. Everyone's sort of like, oh yeah, I know primary colours and I know secondary colours, that's fine. But tertiary is quite important as well. And obviously, as you can see by this colour wheel diagram, you know, basically, once you've got orange, which is your secondary, red is your primary, and then you add those two equally, you'll get a sort of reddish orange. I know this is probably teaching you to suck eggs, and I'm really sorry if it is, but it just gives you an overview, understanding our different colour wheels. And I would just like to sort of say that some of my most successful work, like for logo design, has actually just been primary colours or secondary colours or both. And it's really quite interesting when how much, don't underestimate primary colours, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So, okay, so a bit more techie information. These two words you're going to hear bandied about in the industry, RGB, CMYK. What are they, and what is so important about them? Why do we need to pay attention? RGB is really anything visual on a screen is RGB. So your screens that you're viewing now, you'll be viewing it via RGB. And RGB is red, green, blue. Now, funnily enough, even though red, blue, yellow, or red, yellow, blue is the primary colours, from our visible eye, the eye can pick up green far better than it can pick up yellow. That's why everything's viewed in RGB. Basically, our eyes, if you ever saw yellow text on a white background and compare it to green text, you wouldn't be able to see it as well. So that's RGB, and as you can see in the diagram, when they're all put together, they create the white light again. So as I was saying before, with the whole Isaac Newton and the refraction, blah, 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 this is kind of happening with RGB. So the pros with RGB, obviously, is best for on-screen viewing. You'll get a far brighter look when you're looking on screen, and the colours come up a lot better. It's much crisper. And also, with everything now, because technology is really clever and really Adobe as a software, as a suite, they already know that, you know, they're going to need to convert to CMYK, no problem. Please do not worry, because we'll go over how you do this, making sure. The cons is sometimes the precision level from RGB to CMYK differs. So you will think that you've converted it and it looks really great, but then it comes out to print and then you're like, oh, this hasn't converted as well as I thought it would. Right, okay. Which kind of leads me on to CMYK. So cyan, magenta, yellow, key. Remember that, key. It's important. It really is just cyan, magenta, yellow, black, but K actually stands for key. And for any printed material, you will be using CMYK. Anything printed. If you're going to print anything, it's CMYK, so just remember the difference. CMYK can be costly, but I'm afraid it's the industry and it's the way things are. You'd be used to CMYK because you're using it with buying printer ink, for instance. So yeah, I would say one of the best pieces of advice I could probably give to you guys from going forward is get a good printer, get friends with a good printer. Do not be afraid to go to printers and say, do you know what, guys, I would like to see the quality of your work. And I did that with a printer, and I use them all the time now. And if they're worth their salt, they will tell you. They will say, yeah, sure, okay, and they'll give you the different types of papers, because obviously when you print things on certain papers, if it's like a gloss paper, if it's a heavier weight paper, if it's a matte paper, it's going to print slightly differently depending on what you want. So for posters and brochures and things, you're going to want quite a glossy paper, a sort of satiny effect, and you'll see the difference. So I wanted to show you some examples of RGB to CMYK and what commonly happens, and this does catch a lot of people out. And I've just said at the bottom, always when you send your work to a printer, make sure you've exported it to CMYK settings. There's been so many times, and you'll all do it because it's part of the program of making mistakes and learning. You'll think, oh, great, yeah, I'm done, I'm good, I've sent it to the printer, and then you print, and then it comes out with this like sort of dull colour, and you're like, why is that doing that? That's so frustrating. Why? It's because of the RGB to CMYK conversion. Now the way sort of round that is, and again, this is something that I will show you, but basically you will look on screen, and this blue is, it's quite a bright blue here, and maybe on screen it's sort of middle of the way, but you'll have to make that blue even brighter on screen, and you'll look at it and it will almost be sort of a really garish, and honestly, it's really off-putting, because you look at it and you go, oh, I can't possibly print it like that because it's just going to look horrible. But then you send it through to print and it actually looks fine. So I will talk you through that, but basically it will just, that's how it is. That's the RGB, CMYK, and that's things to look out for and just be aware of. So RGB, that's, yeah. So color manipulation, the 3 key things that you'll probably use. So in Photoshop, you will find yourself coming across these quite a few times. Whether you've scanned an image in or whatever, and you can adjust the natural colours in it via its hue, via its saturation, via its brightness. So with hue, it's basically an extreme version of color. It's just it's this bar, and you just sort of pull it across, and it can either be more blue or more purple or more red, and you are really playing around with the red, yellow, blue key, and that can give you all kinds of different kinds of color manipulation. So that's really what you need to really worry about with hue. And I am a great believer, and I'm telling you the theory of it, but really, once you're actually sat down and you do it and you see the results for yourself, that's when you'll kind of go, oh right, yeah, that makes sense, cool. So the next thing is saturation. So the best way that the simplest way I could probably describe this is, imagine you've got an orange and you squeeze it, and basically when it starts off, the colour of the juice that comes out is a really strong colour, and then as you squeeze more of it and more of the juice comes out, the colour fades. That's basically saturation. Goes a bit grey. The colour, it's relative to its own brightness. And then finally, brightness. Well, brightness is pretty self-explanatory. You're either going really, really bright or really, really dark. And again, all of this is really easy to manipulate when you're on screen. So just remember hue, saturation, brightness. and what they do. So hue is very garish colours, playing around with red, yellow and blue key, and saturation is draining of colour to a more grey, and brightness is obviously bright. Colour manipulation continued. Now this is in the test, and as I was looking at it, because to be perfectly honest, value and affluence in the real world, if you said value to somebody, they'd be like, what? Who? And actually, value is pretty much like saturation. It's the same wording, just for a different type of thing. So the only difference I would say is chroma, and this image here was probably the best visual example that I could see that really kind of explain chroma. So basically, you know, you have this white axis, black and white axis in the center, and chroma is basically the passing of, you know, from the color to the white. That's the level of it, really. And with affluence, just remember, affluence is like with brightness. So if you wanted to add affluence, it's basically brightness, but if you wanted to add affluence, you would add shades of grey to change it. And that's all I would really say, is just remember shades of grey. Shades of grey, sorry. You get the idea. So this is, I know it's really, really short, but what I want to do is I want to kind of show you a bit of the kind of work that I've, let's see. So this is a typical standard, you know, it's a simple PDF file. These are crop marks, so it's good to show your crop and bleed marks. Again, I'll be covering all this, but I'm hoping that for you guys, you will, at the end of this, you'll be presenting your own business cards, your own ideas, whether it be your own company. So that's that kind of thing, and then letterhead. I mean, the thing was, they had this. This is Nottingham, so this is where I'm based, and this is they wanted an outline of Nottingham. Basically, these guys, they're a company. They do just any local news, private social funded community project. So they were like, yeah, I want stationery, I want this, I want that. Brochure design, you'll come across brochure design loads. It's pretty hard to get away from brochure design. So that's the inside bit, and that's the outside. And this is a threefold brochure design